Alright, so this Knife Thoughts video is going to be on this knife, and as you can see, this is the Remington Bullet Prospector baby bullet knife. And this is one that I was really excited to get for a couple reasons, but the main reason being that this is the first Remington knife made by Gradation Cutlery. So you can see it comes in the wax paper like other Gradation Cutlery knives, though it comes in a Remington branded box. And Remington bullet knives have been one of the most collected and sought after traditional knives, a series of knives, for a long time. So they have been around since the 1920s. The first bullet knife, or really what they called Cartridge knife, came out in 1925 and was the larger version, you would be familiar with from GEC as the 23. And then they came out with this, the baby bullet. And they did have lots of other, patterns that were done in the Cartridge series. But this is the first Remington knife made by Gradation Cutlery. And I am a big fan of Gradation Cutlery, as you probably know if you're watching this. And I think a lot of people who like traditional knives now really favor Gradation Cutlery. So it was an exciting development in the traditional knife world. Now, these knives were contracted by Blue Ridge Knives from Gradation Cutlery because Blue Ridge Knives, which is a distributor that's associated with Smoky Mountain Knife Works, but it's its own thing, it's a distributor of knives, owns the Remington brand of knives now. So they, from what I'm told, own the brand, and so they were able to contract this year's bullet knife, or Cartridge knife, from Gradation Cutlery. And other dealers did get them. Now, these knives were available from Smoky Mountain Knife Works, and as of the last time I checked, are still available. They are also available from other dealers, the smaller Gradation Cutlery dealers, through Blue Ridge. And now, because of that, they're pretty much all the same price, which is not usually the case for Gradation Cutlery knives. The dealers tend to charge, different prices depending on the dealer. These are all about $170, and it's definitely expensive for a Gradation Cutlery knife. It's more expensive than most, and certainly more expensive than the other 73s that Gradation Cutlery made along with this knife here in 2021. But whether it's because of that price or because they made a lot of them, which from my understanding they did make a lot of them, the most recent thing I heard, and I didn't see it confirmed by Gradation Cutlery, but I heard that Joan May of Gradation Cutlery said that they made 2,500 of them. Now again, I'm not 100% sure that that's 100% accurate, but if it's close, that's a very big run of knives for Gradation Cutlery. So that combined with the fact that they are a little more expensive than a typical GEC, and particularly more than the other 73s that GEC did on this run, which were in the $80 to $100 range. Some, dealers charged a good bit more, but certainly none of them, as far as I saw, were anywhere near 170. But whether it's because, of both of those factors, or possibly that GEC's branding is more popular than Remington's now, which is something I've considered, these are still available. So as of making this video, and I think probably as of posting it, you can still buy one of these if you find it to be something that you'd like to have. So that's a big difference between this and most other Gradation Cutlery knives. Most Gradation Cutlery knives sell out right away. But let's get into the knife itself. Well, this is Gradation Cutlery's number 73 pattern, which is the smaller of the jumbo trappers. So Gradation Cutlery calls this smaller of this type of trapper pattern the Scout Trapper, or at least that's what they called it on this most recent run. So it's very similar to the 23, if you're more familiar with that, or the jumbo trapper that Remington and other companies have made. So it has a drop point main blade on the show side, and then a full-size secondary, which is a spay blade, on the pile side. Now, one difference between this year's run of 73s and previous runs is that they fixed a small issue that could be found on previous runs of both 73s and 23s. And that is, as seen on this knife, which is a 2007 73, that on previous runs, when you open the knife, the spring would be pretty low at half stop. You can see it sits pretty low at half stop there, but then, flush at open and close, and same deal on the secondary, which is also a spade blade. So they fixed that on this recent run of 73s and 23s. So you can see it's flush at closed, open it. It's actually slightly high. I mean, not very much at all, like maybe a millimeter, actually less than a millimeter, quite a bit less than a millimeter, I'd say, but not very high, but certainly it's not low like on previous runs. And then you open it and it's pretty much flush there. And same deal on the secondary. So you can see it is maybe slightly high and then pretty much flush both at open and closed. And that's a nice thing. Now, I don't personally care much at all about the springs being flush, but it definitely gives it a nicer look and really kind of, I guess, rounds it out to, near perfection, whereas that is a small issue on previous runs. And it also goes well with the fact that this is a square tang, so that it has a flush tang at the fully closed position, as compared to a lot of other GECs like this 93, where the tang is below the bolsters at the full closed position. So you can see it's flush and then pretty close to flush at half stop there, and then it's full open. So that's one upgrade that they did to this 73 pattern for this run. Now they're calling this molasses jig bone, and you can see why. It is a pretty dark brown. There are some lighter areas where it is polished, on top of the jigging and then up towards the bolsters. But it's a pretty dark brown and definitely, has that molasses look. And to be honest, I think, I've seen some of the original Remington Cartridge series knives, and I think that they did a pretty good job. Gradation Cutlery did a pretty good job of approximating what the original jig bone looked like. A collector that I'll mention in a bit, but Don Hackman has some of the original Cartridge series knives, and I've gotten to see them, and it's pretty close in the color and styling of the jigging. Not exact, but I think they did a good job of it. Now, Blue Ridge has called this the Baby Bullet Prospector for finding a new era. And it's an interesting name. I think it's a cool name. And it does come with a little insert here. Now, I want to mention that I got this knife from Collector Knives, and it came in the typical Collector Knives box, and unfortunately that meant that this is folded. Now, it's not the hugest deal to me, but I think if you were, a serious collector of Remington and you wanted to have this insert as a part of the collection, having it folded like this might not be the best thing. So I've always had, great service from Mike at Collector Knives, but I did want to mention that if you buy one from Collector Knives, it seems like it's going to come with this folded up a good bit here. So I'll show you the insert. The insert just talks about the knife, talks about a little bit of the history. You can pause this if you'd like to read it. But it says 2021 marks the finding of a new era for Remington and the Remington bullet knife. And basically, without actually saying Gradation Cutlery, says that it's made by Gradation Cutlery. And they have, Smoky Mountain Knife Works has said, outright that it's made by Gradation Cutlery on some of their videos, but it doesn't actually say so on this. And I think that's because it's branded Remington, so it has to stay branded as a Remington. But also you can see it has the Remington etch on the main blade, and then the Remington cartridge stamp on the tang. So you can see Remington UMC, and then R7352, which is the model number. And on the secondary blade, it has Remington UMC again, made in USA, and then 2021. So it's a very well-made knife. There's no question of that, and it's not a surprise to anyone who has had GEC knives or is familiar with GEC. There's really no issues with it. There's no gaps at all. I mean, this is actually really, really nice and smoothly put together, I'd say. The pins are really well done. I mean, they're really nicely rounded, possibly more so than even some GEC knives. So I wonder if GEC didn't put a little bit of extra care into these Remingtons. The cartridge shield itself is well done. It's well fitted. That's another thing that sometimes you do see a little bit of space on around the shields on GEC knives. There is a little bit down here at the bottom, but I'd say that it's pretty well fitted, especially for, you know, that type of shield. No play, nice action. I would say that the pulls on these are right around a 5. I wouldn't say it's too much more than a 5, maybe a 6, but I would say closer to a 5. But you can see that they have nice action. Snap to half stop and closed really nicely, and they are well centered. And honestly, the tips aren't proud either. I mean, the spade blade tips may be close to proud, but the drop point isn't really that close to proud. So I'm pretty happy with that. Overall, just I would say a high quality knife for even a GEC. And again, if you're familiar with GEC, you know that it's already, you know, expected to be a high quality knife. But I would say that this is a good example of a GEC. So I think it's really cool. I got this one from Collector Knives. I also am getting one with a little bit of extra branding from the Allegheny Mountain Knife Collectors Association club that I go to. It's their 2021 club knife, and unfortunately I had to miss the most recent meeting, so I don't have that one to show off yet, but I wanted to do the video on this one here. So I think it's a cool knife. I'm glad to have gotten one. Like I said, I'm not sure, you know, if they are still available. Well, I'm not sure what the main reason for them still being available is, whether it's the higher price tag than normal, or that there were more made of them than normal, or if the Remington branding doesn't carry as much weight as maybe it did historically. I expected these to be very highly sought after because, you know, it kind of is an intersection of Remington firearms collectors, Remington knives collectors, GEC knife collectors, and I think just generally, you know, traditional knife enthusiasts probably would like it also. So it's something where if it's something you'd like to get and the price tag is all right for you, it is nice that it's still available. Now, one thing I wanted to say here, and I'll talk about this more in the companion article that I'm planning to do on this knife and the AMKCA 2021 club knife, but I wanted to thank Don Hackman, who I mentioned earlier, for always being really, really helpful with Remington knives. I'll show you real quick a couple of my other Remingtons. So the first Remington knife that I got was this one, which is one of their banana pattern cartridge series knives. This one is from 1995, and this would have been a Camillus made. I actually had this at one of the Great Eastern Cutlery rendezvous and was interested in, you know, information on it and was showing it off. And before I went to the AMKCA club, Don Hackman was there at the rendezvous and told me a whole bunch of information about this. So it was really cool to get to know, you know, some about Remington because of that. And since then I have gotten a few others. This was also a banana pattern, but with a different blade and with the lockback. This one was given to me by Northern Knives and is a 1992. Just a really cool big, you know, lockback clip point knife. So I really enjoy that with the cartridge shield. And then my final one, other than the GEC, is this one, which unlike the previous two I just showed, I believe this would have been made by Bear & Son because it has a different stamp on the tang and says North Carolina, USA. I'm not 100% sure. It's been really tough finding information about this one, but I was given this one by Don Southard, the custom knife maker, so I really appreciate that. It was a big surprise and really cool to have this in my collection. But one thing to note about all of these non-GEC ones is that these shields are not pinned, and usually GEC shields are pinned. Now, I will say that there are some GECs that don't have pin shields, particularly the Cripple Creek branded knives, and unfortunately AMKCA branded knives, because the shields that they use are difficult to pin. Although I did get the 2021 club knife, the 23, to have a pin shield, so I'm really happy with that. It was a lot of pestering on my part, I think, went into it, but I'm sure other factors went into it. But one great thing about this Great Eastern Cutlery Remington is that the shield is pinned. So I really appreciate that. I really think that it's a hallmark of a high quality knife. Not to say that these are not high quality knives, but I think that Gradation Cutlery is just a little bit higher level of a knife than, you know, something from Camillus or Baron Sons, particularly those Delrin handled Cartridge series knives. So just a couple cool things about this knife, and like I said, if it's something you're interested in, grab one while they're available. Even though they are high priced on the primary market, I think once these, you know, run out, once they dry up, they're going to be even higher priced, and it is a collector's piece, you know, that probably will gain value. So I'm happy to have gotten one. I hope you have enjoyed getting to see this knife. If so, make sure you give it a thumbs up, and also check out my social media. I'm on Instagram and Facebook at Knife Thoughts, and my website knifethoughts.com, where I post articles on knives like this and knife related topics. And like I said, I will be posting an article on this knife and the AMKCA club knife. One last time, a big thank you to Don Hackman for always being willing to share his knowledge and collection of Remington knives with me. And last but not least, as always, don't forget to go out and do good.